I see we have a Boy Scout in the room. It is our practice to have the Boy Scouts lead us in the pledge. If you'd come forward, young man. We'd all stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Young man, if you'll come to the microphone and introduce yourself and give us the purpose of your visit.
Hello, I'm Brendan Burke from Troop 7153, and I'm here tonight to come and hear about the issues in Roswell to complete my communications merit badge.
Brandon Burke, welcome to the Roswell City Council. Councilman Orland was a Boy Scout, and I'm an Eagle Scout, and you're in good company. Good to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have this will be the Monday, August 8th meeting of the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell. I'd like to welcome everyone here. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion to approve the consent agenda by Councilmember Wynn. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Does anyone in the audience have any questions about the consent agenda? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Councilmember Price, are you voting tonight?
Well, I was going to ask for an item number 4 to be extracted.
We'll take 4 off of the consent agenda. Let me call for a vote again.
Well, let me see what 4 is.
It's sidewalk project, JJ&G. That is off the consent agenda. Any other council members have any questions? All in favor of the passage of items 1, 2, and 3 on the consent agenda? Is that a question or a vote? Councilmember Dippolito, are you voting? That's unanimous. We'll put Mr. Dippolito. That will come under your agenda, and we'll call you.
This is approval of a change order to JJE Constructors, Inc. for the Crabapple Sidewalk Project in the amount of $37,377.20. Mr. Asenbach.
Thank you, Councilman Dippolito. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, Dr. Price, the issue with the sidewalk project, the bulk of that change order was generated by a concrete retaining wall on the side there. And the designers designed it adequately. However, when we got to the field and looked at the situation with the area on top, we made a decision in the field that the wall needed to be raised a certain number of feet so that the backfill slope would be safer for the people that were up there on it. And so that created an additional for labor and materials. We had some minor changes to some guardrail. From the committee's request to minimize the impact of the trees down sort of in the lower area, so we realigned the sidewalk area to bring it closer to the road and minimize the impact of the trees. But again, there was labor and materials involved in that, and there was some additional guardrail that we put in behind the area. That constitutes the bulk of the change order.
Are there any other questions regarding that agenda item? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion for approval of the JJ&G change order by Councilmember Dippolito. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wynn. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That's Councilmember Price. Are you voting?
Is this? I just want to make sure. Is this monies for beautifying? Is this for the facade or?
No, ma'am. No, this was for the structure, if you will.
Okay. All right. Fine.
That vote is unanimous. First, we need to recognize our City Roswell Transportation Department, and I'm going to call on Rich Dippolito to introduce that item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a nice award. It's for our Transportation Department, who is going above and beyond these days to provide us with some great projects for Roswell. So this is recognition of the City of Roswell Transportation Department for placing first in the Georgia section of ITE Summer Seminar Technical Paper Competition. Mr. Eisenbrack.
Thank you, Councilman DiPolito. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, I'd just like to tell you that we all enjoy working here. And it is both an honor and a privilege. It is also a professional challenge. As you know, we all just designed and completed our first roundabout. And while that may look simple, it's just a circle, it's no big deal, you would be amazed at the technical challenges that we went through in the design. The whole concept of a modern roundabout is evolving nationally. We took the best ideas that we found across the country and incorporated them into this roundabout. And I will be honest with you that we learned quite a bit. And especially being the fact that it was a 5-legged roundabout, there were just a number of technical challenges. And so as we went through the design and the construction, we felt it was appropriate for us to document those experiences and share our lessons learned with our fellow professionals in the field. And we wrote a paper jointly, and it was submitted to the Institute of Transportation Engineers Summer Seminar along with 6 other papers, and we were awarded first place. So I want you to know that your transportation department does do exceptional work and is also recognized in its professional career field. So I just wanted you to know this.
Mr. Eisenbrack, on behalf of the City of Roswell, I want to congratulate the department for that award, and I believe it was well deserved. Let's have a hand for our transportation.
Thank you, Mayor. And for the fellow. Thank you.
All right, and before you sit down, I'm going to let you introduce the next item, which is a presentation to the City of Roswell for the renewal of Bicycle Friendly Community Award given by the League of American Bicyclists. And Mr. Eisenbrack has been a big part of the city receiving this award and continues to be very active in Bike Roswell, in addition to being an avid cyclist. So we're going to let you present this.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to request being joined by some of my other fellow cyclists. Of course, you know, Bike Roswell represents all cycling, recreation, well as road and mountain cyclists. So I have some of my cohorts here with me, but it's an honor for us to be able to take the city's great infrastructure and try to improve it in a multimodal capacity, which means we're doing things for other than just cars. We're improving the world for bicycles. As you'll recall, we were given an honorable mention back in 2005, and since then we've made great strides in improving the city and its bicycle friendliness. We've gotten some national recognition, and we are striving to improve our level. There are 4 levels. There's bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. We're at the bronze level. We recently submitted our application, and we were renewed. And so what we got was a nice sign that we'll put up here. If you
How did we get to 2015?
Well, that they renewed it for 4 years.
Oh, we're good
Last
for 4
time
years.
we were recognized for 2 years, and when we renewed it, they extended it for a period of 4 years. So in the spring of 2015, we will need to continue. This is a continuous improvement process, and so we are well on our way. As you know, we were the first city in the state to be duly designated as a bicycle-friendly community, and for the good works of the folks here on the Bike Roswell staff, the Rambo staff, all volunteers, by the way, just very happy that you support us as cyclists here in the city. So on behalf of the Bike Roswell Board of Directors and the Rambo Board of Directors, I'd like to say thank you for allowing us to pursue our passion within the city.
On behalf of the City of Roswell, I want to thank Rambo and Bike Roswell and all of the volunteers. I have noticed every year more and more cyclists on the road. The roads are becoming safer and friendlier, and the entire community is supporting that, and we appreciate the leadership you all have shown. One of the next things we're going to be doing is creating a bicycle advisory committee.
Yes, sir.
And that will be What's the status of the creation of that committee?
We are bringing that to the Transportation Committee the 26th of this month.
I would encourage all the folks who want to become more involved in bicycling in Roswell to consider serving on our Bicycle Advisory Committee. We already have an informal Bicycle Advisory Committee, and we appreciate all the advice you get, but we're going to formalize that, which will help us win points toward the next level of bicycle-friendly. So let's have a hand for all the bicycle-friendly leaders in Roswell. Thank you, gentlemen. Next, we have two appointments to the Planning Commission to consider. The first is Joe Piontek, who is present here tonight. Do we have a motion to approve the appointment of Joe Piontek to the Planning Commission?
Move for approval.
Motion by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Wynn. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. The second appointment to the Planning Commission is Lisa DeCarbo. Do we have a motion to confirm the appointment of Lisa DeCarbo?
Move for approval.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito. I believe the second was by Councilmember Orleans. All in favor of that motion? Passes. Councilmember Wynn, are you voting? Passes unanimously. This time I'll call upon our liaison to the Administration and Finance Department, Councilmember Jerry Orleans.
Item on our agenda tonight is approval of amendment to Chapter 3 Alcoholic Beverages of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to allow for the sale of alcoholic beverages by the package on Sundays, and to add the referendum to add the referendum to the November 8th, 2011 general election ballot. And this is the second reading. This is for the city attorney.
Davidson, would you read the ordinance, please?
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the City of Roswell, Georgia, to amend Chapter 3 of the Roswell Code of Ordinances to allow for the sale of alcoholic beverages by the package on Sundays, if approved by a citywide referendum to be held in conjunction with the 2011 general election, to repeal conflicting ordinances and to call for a referendum on the question and for other purposes. Now, therefore, be it ordained, and is hereby ordained that, subject to passage by the Roswell voters of a public referendum, Chapter 3, Alcoholic Beverages, is hereby amended as follows. Article 3.5, Business Regulations, Section 3.5.5, Days when Sales Unlawful of the Roswell Code of Ordinances, is hereby amended by deleting subsection B in its entirety and replacing said subsection with a new subsection B to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference. And Article 3.5 is further amended by deleting subsection A of Section 3.5.6, Hours of Operation, in its entirety, and replacing said subsection A with a new subsection A to read as follows, text again of which is incorporated herein by reference. And be it further ordained by the Mayor and Council that the City of Roswell hereby calls for a special election as provided by law for the purpose of submitting this question to the electors of the City of Roswell for approval or rejection. And if approved, this will be the second reading of the ordinance.
Mr. Davis, as I understand it, if approved by the voters by a majority of the voters of the City of Roswell on November 8th, we would allow sale of alcoholic beverages by the package Sundays from what hours?
From 12:30 to 11:30 at night.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Do we have a motion? Question by Councilmember Price.
I think we asked last time this came up. This is the second reading, right? I think we asked for the specific wording of the referendum. Is that somewhere?
It's in number 3.
Is that established by statute?
Okay.
It's established by state law.
So it's the same in every city?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Move for approval of second reading.
Motion by Councilman Orleans for approval. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll call upon Councilmember Betty Price, liaison to the Community Development Department.
The first item is approval of the initiation of a text amendment to Section 10 of the zoning ordinance to include regulations for donation bins in the city of Roswell. Brad Townsend.
This is a proposed initiation of a text amendment that will control the permit requirements, application information, location, placement, control, and fees, as well as a definition for donation bins. This will be placed in the zoning ordinance in Section 10. Staff recommends approval of the initiation as recommended by committee.
Does the council have any questions? Yes, Councilmember Diamond.
I did. There we go. On our committee agenda tomorrow, we have consideration of putting a certain company's bins, but if we're limiting them to one bin per location, I guess I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We haven't considered that yet, but I would think any entity that wants to come to us, we'd have a hard time picking one over the rest of them. So I guess I'd like to know, I don't recall the discussion about how we ended up with one per location, but okay.
Is that one per company per location or only one bin per location?
The way it was recommended at committee,
Okay.
which would be a person or entity would be allowed to place no more than one donation bin per parcel or location.
Okay. So
That's
you
all
will
the
have more than
language.
one bin.
So you could have multiple bins on one parcel, but only one per applicant.
Right, one person or entity,
Okay.
correct.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank
And
you.
again, this is an initiation. There'll be lots of opportunity for discussion and amendment. It's just simply do we want to move it forward for further discussion? Other questions? Councilmember Price.
I think we also need to make a distinction as to location, because I think as we were working through this was, the assumption was, I believe that this was private property, because with our public properties, we already have some arrangements or contracts with some entities. So would this supersede that, or would this be next to?
The way that ordinance is drafted and would be applied would only be to private property, unless it's your intent that it apply to both public and private property. It needs to be redrafted then.
I think the clarification was perhaps we need to make it clear that it does not apply to city property if we want to give more than one person.
If
There's nothing in here that says private property. It
No.
says the city of Roswell, which would include public
Right.
property.
Right.
So we may need to figure out a way to make it
Clarify.
clear
So
that this is
the
private.
clarification is it is only for private property.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments before we entertain a motion? Do we have a motion? Councilmember Price.
Yes, move to approve the initiation of the text amendment, Section 10 of the zoning ordinance regarding donation bins.
Motion for approval by Councilmember Price. Is there a second? Yes, Councilmember Diamond, is that a question or a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
The next item is approval of a resolution to accept a community development block grant, CDBG, for the Adult Recreation Center expansion project in the amount of $417,587, and approval of a budget amendment 122G1-08-08-11 in the amount of $417,587. Alice Wakefield.
Yes, as was mentioned, this is a request to approve a resolution for the acceptance of the 2011 CDBG funds from Fulton County for the Adult Rec Center Addition Project. This resolution allows the mayor and/or the city administrator to execute the grant agreement with the county. Staff's, of course, recommendations approval.
Are there any questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the resolution to accept the CDBG grant for the Adult Recreation Center.
Motion by Councilmember Price to accept. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Orleans. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Councilmember Eigelhart, Liaison to Rec and Parks Department. If you'll call your agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now that we have voted to accept the money, we're going to waste no time in spending it, and we're going to, in fact, make the next
thing to actually spend some of that, and that would be for the design services themselves. And we've talked about this, but Joe, if you wouldn't mind giving some more detail of exactly what this would go for.
Thank you, Mr. Eichelhart. Again, this project is an addition to the Adult Rec Center. This is the Phase 1, which is a fitness aspect. We received 15 applicants for architects for design services. We had a 6-member committee that reviewed all the applications, 3 members from the Recreation Commission, 3 members from the Adult Recreation Center. It came down to interviewing 3 final firms. The selection committee selected Wright Mitchell and Associates to complete the Phase 1 portion of the project. And now that we have money, I guess we can proceed.
Just a question, this Phase 1, if you'll describe what that is going to be and the total amount of that expected budget, expected expenditure.
Phase 1 is just an addition to the fitness center. It's about a 3,000 square foot addition. Would include restrooms and showers. The approximate cost of this phase is $800,000.
And where is the remainder of the money? Is that you already have that, or we expect to bring that come in later?
We had hoped the remaining funds would come from the 2012 CDBG funds.
All right, thank you. Did any other questions for Mr. Glover? Do we have a motion? Motion by Councilmember Eichelhart for approval. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Yes. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time, we'll call upon our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, at the last council meeting, we heard an appeal of the grant of a alcohol license to R&B Wines and Spirits and Bonifacata at 1425 Market Boulevard, number 300 in Roswell. The item was deferred so we could get some clarification on our actual interpretation of our own ordinance and some direction from council. I sent that direction to the applicant and Mr. Wiley, who appealed, or Mr. Levinson, I guess. And both sides, to my knowledge, have prepared new surveys, and they are both here to present them again.
Would you read your letter and your interpretation that they were to follow for the council?
I do not have my letter with me, Mayor.
I'm sure one of the applicants can furnish it to us, or the appellant, or the appellee.
Yeah. You want me to read the whole letter?
I don't think you need to read the whole letter. I'm looking at the operative language so everybody understands what definition was given to the parties.
Okay. Let's see. Basically, I said the mayor and council therefore will allow both parties the opportunity to provide new surveys under the following guidelines and interpretation of the city ordinance. Surveys shall show the most direct route of travel on the ground as would be traversed by a reasonable man while showing or noting any immovable impediments that require the route to be altered. Immovable impediments for purposes of this matter shall include, but not be limited to, trees, bushes, walls, not including curbs, fences, buildings, ditches, unless a man-made permanent bridge is available, raised concrete medians over 12 inches in height, rivers, lakes, ponds, signs, monuments over 12 inches in height, and utility cabinets over 12 inches in height, etc., but shall not include normal street curbs, cars, or other automobiles, grass street medians, or pedestrian islands, or other objects that may be reasonably moved or traversed. The distance shall be measured in a straight line from the front door of the structure from which the beverage alcohol is sold or offered for sale to the front door of the building of, for these purposes, the nearest retail packaged distilled spirits store, accounting for the most direct route of travel around immovable objects or impediments.
Does the council have any questions about that definition or those guidelines? This time we'll hear from the appellant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Again, I'm Louis Levinson. We agree with the city attorney's definition as we presented the statute. I would say that you are now faced with an interesting factual determination, which is, and I say interesting and almost humorous, is that since the last time that we were here before you, the applicant has built a fence that would impede the direct line. The evidence will be here. We have our surveyor to present this to you. But I don't think there's any dispute that the applicant built a fence to impede the direct line that previously would have been unimpeded and would not have required any circuitous route around an immovable impediment. When the applicant's efforts to build the fence were detected by the surveyor that Mr. Watley and Mr. O'Darrow have engaged, they took the fence down and have now installed bushes, which I guess, and I say I guess because I'm not certain. How do I do that? Turn on your machine. There you are. They've now installed bushes as such, which when reflected on their survey are considered by the applicant to be within the definition of the city attorney's understanding of an immovable impediment. And in fairness to the city attorney, he did say that immovable impediments would include but not be limited to trees, bushes, walls, not curbs. So the factual decision that I think you're going to be faced with is whether you will allow an applicant during the pending application to construct a fence to subvert the intention of the legislation and or install bushes, which
I'm not sure it's going to solve any problem.
Yes, sir.
And the ruling is going to be, I think we're hearing an appeal, not a new application. And although we've asked to go back and check the facts as they were when this appeal was made, I don't think it's appropriate to change the facts during the appeal. Now, that's on your side of this thing. Well, my city attorney reminded me that we have no statute about preventing a reapplication for a liquor license. Is that a fair statement? So if an obstruction arises and it's a legal obstruction, the applicant may reapply under a new set of facts and be granted the application if under the new set of facts things have changed. So that's not making you happy and it's not making him happy, but I think it's following the law. Now, getting back to...
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can interrupt, because you made a ruling without hearing our response to...
I will hear your response, but it's going to be hard to change my mind.
But we've got case law on point that shows that...
You can change the facts after you appeal the case?
That it's the standards that are when it comes to liquor licensing, it's the standards in place on the day of the hearing.
The hearing, we're not hearing this as an original application. We're hearing this as an appeal.
But you've asked for new evidence to be presented, and so the new evidence being presented also, I think, can reflect.
Well, I don't think you can generate new evidence.
When you look at the case law, and we're going to share that with you.
I'd be glad to look at the case law and hear my attorney's advice, but to say that we're creating new law, new evidence after an appeal is filed and the hearing is heard, it's going to have to be on point.
Well, we just ask that you consider the case law before making a ruling.
I'm just saying that now do we still have issues about whether they're, to present it, but I think we'll hear it, but that's what I'm going to... I can't imagine a case in which you've had a hearing and then you're appealing it and then you go back and change the facts and add new evidence. We weren't asking for creating new evidence. We were asking for a review of the existing evidence.
I hate to interrupt, Mr. Levinson, but when at the appropriate time we're ready to make that case. We just ask that you withhold your judgment until we...
I'm going to, given the twists and turns of this case, whether by obstacle, physical or legal, I think it's appropriate to, again, take it under advisement after we hear from all the parties. So we'll hear from Mr. Levinson, and we'll hear from you, but...
all we're just asking is to give us an opportunity to make that case.
And Judge,
We'll let you present the evidence.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, and Council.
We'll let you present the evidence, but it's...
The only issue that I thought we reconvened for today was for you to ascertain the accuracy of the surveys, because there was some question when we were here on 25 July as to whether the surveys were accurate, and we now have the surveyor, and I believe the applicant has its surveyor, and our...
I don't think we question the accuracies of the surveyor, Mr. Levins. I think we did not have clear guidelines before. Mr. Davidson has given the guidelines that need to be followed. And so we're just trying to say the council will have to determine whether or not the surveyor followed those guidelines in making the determination. So we weren't questioning the accuracy of the surveyor. We were questioning the guidelines that were followed in making that survey.
Well, I think then if there is no... Mr. Griffin is here if there's a question from council or from the mayor on the method by which he applied the guidelines of the city attorney. And we represent to the council that he did, except for the intervening fence, now bushes, that would, according to the applicant's interpretation of the city attorney's interpretation of the legislation, now require a circuit around the bushes, which you could see any small dog could walk through, and is clearly not the intention of the statute to create an impediment, because under that, from a public policy point of view, bushes, think about it, bushes could be moved, placed, and replaced and make a mockery of the intention of the straight line interpretation of the statute.
I think we've already done that to ourselves.
Well, no.
You've made my argument.
Mr. Mayor, you have not done that. The applicant has done that, and I think that therefore the burden is on the applicant to change. Well, the legislation is clear. The facts have morphed since July 25th, and I think we ask you to sustain our appeal and deny the application. But that's our argument, and again, the surveyors here should...
I think it'd be appropriate for the surveyor to come and tell us...
Yes, sir.
Perhaps y'all had a video that showed how he walked this, or...
We have both a video and we have the surveyor and who can walk you through the steps.
I think walking us through the video and he could voice over the video might be the best way to cut this thing short.
All right. Yes, sir. Lori? Why don't you just... Can we just...
See if we can get the technical help up here to put this
Mr. Griffin, you want to come on up, please? Mr. Griffin, you want to come up, please? It's both legally interesting and fun to do this. But in response, while we're waiting to the mayor's question about whether there could be a reapplication, I don't deny that would be the case. But under the present facts, I believe even those bushes would not constitute an impediment by the city attorney's definition of an impediment. Of course, I know Mr. Sard takes a different point of view.
Look, I can't walk you through it because I wasn't here when they took the video.
Tell the council who you are, sir.
My name's Jim Griffin. I work for Georgia Land Surveying, and I've been doing liquor surveys for 35 years. And I'm telling you, we measured it 4 times, the straight line. We didn't run into no fences. We didn't run into any buildings. We went around them, and it wasn't 1,500 feet. Now, no matter what anybody else says, I can tell you we done it the way you ought to do it.
I think you've got a video, and perhaps you can walk us through the
video.
We got a video, show the line that you took.
While they're waiting,
Yes.
While they're getting set up, can somebody just, what was the difference with the bushes or without the bushes?
Mr. Price, I don't know what the measurement is according to the applicant's total lineage, but I believe they told me in the hallway it was 1,500 and some odd feet, maybe 50 or 60 feet beyond the 500 yards.
So one shows it under, one shows it over?
That is correct.
Thank
The applicants, I don't want to steal Mr. Sard's thunder, but this is his as you can see, the line up to this is Holcomb Bridge, isn't it? Up to Holcomb Bridge is pretty much identical with the line drawn by Mr. Griffin.
Right.
And after that, there's a difference of opinion about how the line is to be drawn, and it zigzags around, essentially avoiding what you see described on the applicant survey as a, quote, bush impediment, which is the bushes that I showed you the photographs of.
Okay, there's a wheel started at 0. It showed the wheel started at 0, and this is my son rolling this. He's a registered surveyor, and he wouldn't do it wrong. And that's exactly the way he's going. And I want y'all to look and see if you see any trees, anything that he's... Just keep a look at the way he's going. Now he's coming over a curb here, but we're allowed to come over curbs. And I don't see no fences. Here he comes down the edge of the parking lot and the curb again.
He's going to
That's
move
right,
quick.
straight across the street. And my son tells me this is almost a straight line, just going around that one auto place over there. There he comes on down the walk. And there's no fence there. And at the time we done that, there wasn't any, I don't think there was any bushes. And the way he's rolling is the way the guy with the stake told me to roll it.
Are those the bushes that I was showing in the photograph?
Which one?
They just passed on the left.
They might be, and I didn't notice them when we passed them, but they're not an impediment to rolling the wheel. A fence, a stone wall, or something like that, you'd have to go around. But bushes 3 foot apart, you could go through them. Well, there's nothing in the way but one curb between there and the store. But we can watch it all the way there and see what the distance is on the wheel. He shows the wheel when he gets there. There's your distance, 1,478 feet. We rolled it another time, got 1,482. I rolled it a total of 4 times, and I never got 1,500 on any of the 4 times we rolled it.
Stay right there, Mr. Griffin. He wants to ask you something.
Yes, Mr. Levinson, is it possible to take back, I just want to see that one little section when they're going through the drive-through and down into the junipers and stepping off that curb. Could I just see that little segment again, please? Thank you.
Please turn on your microphone.
I'm sorry. It's after you cross Holcomb Bridge, go through the drive-through, then you make a little turning, go down into the junipers, and then you step down into the parking lot of the marketplace. So it's probably a couple of minutes after this one. Okay, hold on just a minute. It's okay, right here would be fine, because now you're going to be walking through there. So this would be just fine right here. Thank you.
It's before that, isn't it?
No, it's right after this.
Okay.
I think it is, isn't it?
You could go down.
Is anybody here? Okay, this is what I wanted to see. Thank you.
Right there, there's some bushes about, this deep. Some grass.
Thank you. That's all I need to see. Thank you.
Questions, just stay right
Okay.
And if the applicant wishes to cross-examine the witness.
Good evening, Mr. Griffin. My name is Mike Sard. We haven't met before. A few questions for you, sir.
Okay.
You did not walk...
Mr. Sarr, if you'll speak in the microphone, both of you need a microphone.
I'm sorry?
Our surveyor needs to be in
Speak
front
in
of the
this microphone.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
You're fine. You're fine. I just want both of you to be recorded.
Okay. Mr. Griffin, you didn't walk this distance yourself, did you?
No, others walked it. I was the party chief, and I had people working for me.
Okay. So you couldn't have walked that yourself, could you?
No, I couldn't have walked it. That's right.
Okay. You couldn't have fit at the initial part of the video. You couldn't have walked between the pole and the wall and down that hill, correct?
I know where you're getting at, but I'm handicapped. But I could have walked it. I guarantee you, if you want, I'll get my walker and I can go right down through there.
Okay.
I mean, I can go right down through there.
Okay. So you could walk through those junipers.
Those junipers and those little
And those
weeds
medians.
and stuff. I'd have a little trouble, but I could do it.
You could make it through the grass swales.
And right, if I was having to go 3,000 foot otherwise, or go straight through there, I can go straight through there.
Right. You're familiar with the topography of
I'm real
that space?
familiar with it. Okay. I mean, I rode my car along while they were measuring, and watched them every step of the way. I'm real familiar with the photography, and let me just tell you something.
The topography?
I can, right.
The topography?
Right,
Okay.
the topography.
Not photography?
Right.
Okay.
I didn't say photography.
Okay, I apologize if I
I
misunderstood.
may not be clear, but I know the difference. And let me just tell you, I could put a stand there, a chair, and I can walk it, stop at that chair, and walk the whole line.
Okay. Why did in the video we saw Mr. Watley direct your son to go in a certain direction? Why did your son need direction from Mr. Watley?
My son didn't need any directions. Mr. Watley's paying for it, and he's trying to get the shortest line. And in other words, when I come over here, I wanted Mr. Watley to show me what he thought was his closest line, and I measured it.
Okay, isn't that for you, isn't that for the surveyor to decide?
And what he had was the closest line.
Yeah.
That's the reason I decided it. And I went over before Mr. Watley showed me where to measure, and I measured it one time and one back, and then he showed me, and the way he says is the closest, and it was the closest.
You didn't run the wheel over the junipers, right? That was your son who did that?
That was my son that did that, and that was my son come out with me the first day.
Okay. Can you tell us what the depth is of those junipers?
I'd say about this deep.
The depth?
I'm saying about 12 inches or 12 to 15 inches.
Thank you, sir. That's what I wanted. 12 inches is what your belief was.
Okay. The method that was used by going through the junipers and the grass and likewise, do you think it was intended for people to travel, for anyone to travel that way? By the design?
The way you used to travel is a pedestrian walk, and that's the way we've always measured it. But the state changed it to a straight line besides obstacles and all, and you don't even have to be able to walk the line. You could measure it with a distance meter, the way they're saying it. And I got that from the man, the state guy. That's on liquor store to liquor store.
What I'm asking you is, do you think the design of those buildings and the people who designed those buildings and those parking lots, they intended for those medians to be traveled?
Intended for
by people or vehicles or anybody?
No, the way we travel, no, I don't think they intended that to be traveled. We're surveyors. We're supposed to measure it the way they want to measure it.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. I don't have any other questions for Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, sir. We'll hear from anything further from the appellate.
No, sir. Nothing further.
This time we'll hear from the appellee.
All right, that was their interpretation of what the way a reasonable man would walk. I don't think there was a lot. I think it was very unreasonable. For the record, we want to state that the survey we provided with the application.
Right, this time, let's get the evidence in and then make an argument.
Okay, I think we have an objection for the record that we want to make sure that we're clear.
But procedure, their objections to the evidence, and then you can make your argument. I first want to get the evidence in.
Okay. All right, so let's get to the kind of the housekeeping issue about the fence and the shrubs. I think it appeared there was some attempt to think that it was humorous that we're creating obstacles or impediments. We don't think it's humorous. But we do think it shows the unreasonableness of the ordinance. Initially, there was a fence installed. That's correct, and that was done after our last hearing. Our client got permission from the landlord to install the fence. It was intended to be an impediment. We're not trying to fool anybody. As the fence was being installed, we then found out that we needed to get a permit from the city for the fence. So when we knew we didn't have time to get a permit, we removed the fence. So that's what happened with the fence. Instead, we found out that we were allowed to put up bushes without a permit. So we got permission from the landlord that we'll share with you. But it's a letter from the landlord that says we have permission to put up the bushes. You want to save the law for later? Just get in.
First, I'd like to try to get the evidence in. I don't want to mix argument with the evidence. Okay. I want the council to understand what the evidence is, and then you can make your argument.
All right, so let's have Mr. Barger come up then. We also have a video that we'd like to hook up. We did two routes of travel. We did 2 routes of travel back and forth. The one we'll show you is the same to show you is the same route as theirs, just to be consistent. So we can the same point of view, leaving their store to come to our client's store, leaving the liquor depot to come to R&B.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you have a question?
While they're setting up, could Mr. Davison read that definition again, please?
Mr. Davison, if you'd read the definition again, please.
If Mr. Sard will bring me my paper. Thank you.
And Before you leave, well, let's get a copy of Mr. Davidson's letter, because this is going to be further discussion. If you can, if I can have one of the staff members run out and get a copy of this, make maybe 7 copies. Just hand it to somebody behind you.
Okay, my definition read, the survey shall show the most direct route of travel on the ground as would be traversed by a reasonable man while showing or noting any immovable impediments that require the route to be altered. Immovable impediments for purposes of this matter shall include, but not be limited to, trees, bushes, walls, not curbs, fences, buildings, ditches, unless a man-made permanent bridge is available, raised concrete medians over 12 inches in height, rivers, lakes, ponds, signs, monuments over 12 inches in height, and utility cabinets over 12 inches in height, etc., but shall not include normal street curbs, cars or other automobiles, grass street medians or pedestrian islands, or other objects that may be reasonably moved or traversed.
Right after the word reasonable, what was the word you
Yeah,
said?
that very first sentence, did you say immovable or movable? Well, we'll get a copy of it.
We're going to furnish all
Okay.
council members with a copy.
Immovable.
Immovable.
Immovable. Impediments.
Immovable.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Reintroducing Mr. Barger to you. We've already gone over his qualifications at the last hearing, so unless you want us to repeat them,
No, sir.
stay away.
Unless the other side has a challenge, we'll accept both sides.
I think like they did, we'll put the video on. Let's have Mr. Barger talk over it and explain the method that he used. Folks, I think we apologize because I think this is how we're going to have to look at it. I believe it is going to be sideways. I don't know if you could turn your screens. We had a disconnect between, this was done in Word. Ours, we only have Microsoft. Go ahead and explain, Mike.
The route that I chose was coming up a little bit different than Mr. Watley's surveyor. I did not go down the steep embankment. I just didn't feel that was a route that a reasonable man would traverse through. Right around this point right here, I'm probably back on the same line as Mr. Griffin. Right when I get past this sidewalk is where my route is different than Mr. Griffin's. I did not traverse through the juniper bushes. The route that I'm going right in this area is the route that is going around the new planted bushes, and also there's also another little planted island that was existing that I had to traverse around too. That's the existing little planted island. And I had measured this distance going from one store to the other and then again coming back, and my difference in measurement was within 2 feet. Yes, sir. $15.65. The measurement going back the other way was 2 feet shorter, and that's the one that shows up on the survey.
Mr. Barger, I'd like to ask you
some questions about the video and some photographs that we have.
Actually, wait till they get
Um, Let's start with the initial part of that video. When you walked out of the liquor depot, there was a slope. Why didn't you go down that slope?
Well, it was relatively steep, and also it was kind of tight to get in between the pole and the existing wall.
You can put yours on there. Put that on there. I'm going to show you a photograph marked exhibit number 1. And if you can explain to the council, please, what this depicts.
This is a picture that was taken beside the Waffle House, looking back toward that first impediment of the wall and the juniper bushes. And that area is right there, if you can see the pinpoint.
Don't mind if I handed you a picture? I think it's easier to see.
You'll hand it to Ms. Love?
Let's go ahead and explain that again, please. If you can point to the council has the benefit of the photograph in their hands.
Sure. This is a picture taken beside the Waffle House, looking back toward the liquor depot being in this area right here, and this is a retainer wall. This is the spot where the wall and the power pole is that Mr. Watley's surveyor came down the little slope there.
That's the part where the pole that he smashed his shoulder into?
Yes.
Okay. And almost fell down the hill?
Yes.
Can you...
I think the witness needs to testify rather than the lawyer putting words into his mouth.
Trying to help him remember. If you could explain to the council what the slope is on that median, please.
Well, I didn't measure the slope. I'm going to say it's probably about 4 to 5 feet in an elevation change in that area.
And you had mentioned that this area is covered with juniper.
Yes, there's just a small little sliver of dirt between the wall and where all the junipers are. I don't know if that's just a beaten out path by pedestrians or where stormwater is coming through there. Or it's just a small area.
So I'll show you in a photograph marked exhibit number 2. And if you could explain to the council what we're looking at now.
These are the junipers that are on the other side of the wall. That the junipers run right up in the little curb island area all the way up to that pole, and then there was like the small gap between the pole and the wall.
You can hold that for a photo. Show you an exhibit marked number 3. And if you could explain, please, to the council what that photograph shows.
This is just where I took a measurement inside the junipers just to get a rough idea of how deep they were. And I would say on average, I agree with Mr. Griffin, they're about a foot deep.
Did you measured them?
Yes.
Some of them were greater. Were they greater than a foot?
Yeah, I mean, you get that with juniper bushes. You can't get an accurate measurement all the way around. They're too sporadic in growth.
Okay. Show you an exhibit mark number 4. If you can explain, please, to the council what that is.
This is the area of the gate that was shown in the video where I crossed the gate. This is looking from the opposite direction, but it's the same gate. I came down the hill in the video and crossed coming this way rather than the way the photograph was taken.
But you measured under the gate, correct?
Right.
So the gate was not an impediment?
No.
And can you tell the council why that is?
I could climb over it.
Do you know whether whether that gate is open during the week?
No, I've only seen it early in the morning, so I don't know at what time the gate is open.
Okay. So you exhibit number 5.
This is the area in Mr. Griffin's video where their surveyor traversed underneath the drive-through and came through in this general area through those juniper bushes.
Do you know what the slope was of that, approximately, or the?
No, again, I didn't measure the slope.
What about the drop between the top of the junipers and the bottom?
Again, it's probably roughly 5 feet.
Did you measure the depth of those junipers?
Yes.
Show you exhibit number 6.
The junipers in this area were a little bit deeper than the ones across the road. I'm going to say these were probably a little better than a foot, maybe 14, 15 inches on average.
And that was the route that Mr. Griffin took, correct?
Correct. Yes. This is the same area that I showed you on the last photograph.
Did you try to run your wheel up on those junipers?
No.
Did you try to run the wheel? Did you try to test the wheel out on junipers on either side?
No, I preferred to keep the wheel on a real solid surface.
Okay. Outside of the purposes of your measurement, did you try to run the wheel on the junipers?
No.
Show you exhibit number 6. If you could explain to the council what that is, please.
This is the area of the of where the new bushes were planted, and I think Mr. Griffin's measurement came right in this area, right along in here somewhere. I'm not exactly sure, but for my measurements, I went around the bushes and went this island right here on this side of the picture connects to another set of new bushes, and it goes all the way around the little landscape island right there, all the way to that little secondary entrance of the parking lot.
So there are two banks of new bushes.
Correct.
Right. Show you exhibit number 7.
I think this is the same bank of bushes, just from a different angle.
And exhibit number 8. If you can describe that for the council, please.
This bank of bushes here is the ones that's the farthest row from the center landscape island right here. Those are the ones to the west, and there's another row of bushes to the east of that.
And so you felt that the bushes were an impediment?
Yes.
Okay, I have no other questions for Mr. Barger at this time.
Does the appellant wish to ask any questions?
It appears that your testimony varies. It appears that your testimony varies from Mr. Griffin's in 3 areas, correct, sir? You directed your wheel around the juniper bushes. You directed your wheel around the newly planted bushes, and you went around an island in the parking lot, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and those were 3 judgment calls that you made as distinguished from the route that Mr. Griffin took, correct?
This is the route that I chose based on the city attorney's criteria for going around the bushes.
Yes, sir, but the only differences between the route that was demonstrated to council by Mr. Griffin and the route demonstrated to council by you are the 3 areas that I just highlighted, correct? The bushes that were planted with the landlord's permission on the landlord's property by the applicant, correct?
That's one, yes.
That's one. And then an island in the parking lot, which you decided to go around.
Which parking lot are you referring to? The auto dealership parking lot?
All I remember you saying in your video and audio was that you went around an island in a parking lot that Mr. Griffin did not go around.
That's the one up here closer to the liquor depot.
And the juniper bushes.
And the juniper bush is the one.
12-inch or 6-inch juniper bushes. Okay.
Correct.
And as a result, there's a difference of 18 and 65 is 87 feet, correct, between Mr. Griffin and yourself.
Right.
Correct. And do you agree that those 3 detours that you took that you believe are consistent with the city attorney's interpretation of the statute is what accounts for the 87 feet?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I've got. Thank you.
No other questions for Mr. Barger? No other evidence in this argument? If we could introduce the documents.
You may introduce the documents if you'll give them to Ms. Love. And if you've got some case law, you may want to give that to her. Does the council have any questions? Does that complete your presentation?
Just argument in law.
We'll hear argument next. Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Diamond.
Yes, sir. Mr. Sard, what was the purpose of planting the bushes? Clearly you had a presentation before that. If you didn't believe you were short, why would you plant the bushes?
As we said earlier, our initial survey we think is the correct way to measure. We object to this particular interpretation that we're being asked to do. Notwithstanding that objection, and subject to that objection, we're still following the instructions of the council, the instructions received by Mr. Davidson to take this other route. Unquestionably, the purpose of the bushes was to create an impediment. We're not disguising that. We did get permission from the landlord, as you see, and we put it there so that one could not traverse that area. It was our preference to put a fence, but we didn't have a permit for the fence.
Other questions? Councilmember Eichelhardt.
I happened to walk out there today. I did not have my wheel with me, though. If I had, I'd probably not have any questions. But that gate generally is open, so I guess you could traverse it, the one that goes into the parking lot of the car dealer. But I'm curious as to why you could climb over that but not walk through little bushes that are about 1.5 feet tall that I walk through.
I just didn't want to run my wheel through those bushes. I just didn't think it's I've always been told and taught when you're running those wheels, you make sure it's on a solid surface, otherwise you might not get accurate readings.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Does the council members have any other questions for either of the witnesses? At this time, we'll hear the we'll hear the appellee's argument and then the appellant's argument.
First of all, thank you for enduring the video. Massages will come after the hearing. As I mentioned to Ms. Diamond, the survey that we presented today is subject to our objection that the first survey was the correct one. As I mentioned earlier, the law in Georgia is that you apply the standards that are in effect on the date of the hearing of an application. It's not the standards that were in place at the day of the application. And the law is very clear on that. It distinguishes liquor license cases versus zoning cases. And I'll give to Mr. Davidson and Mr. Levinson copies of two cases. First is Jackson v. 3 Aces Company, Inc. It's a City of Atlanta, interprets a City of Atlanta ordinance in 1982. It's a state Supreme Court case. The other one is a more recent case from the state Supreme Court upholding that ruling in Jackson, and that's from 2007, City of Homerville v. Touchton. So you all instructed at the last hearing that new evidence be admitted. If we were stuck with looking at the record of the first case, you wouldn't have a survey from these folks. The record in the first case, they didn't even appear at the first case. We had our hearing. The License Review Board approved our client's application, and a license was issued. After the hearing was over, the opposition appeared. Well after we had already left the hearing. So there was no evidence proffered by them in that particular case. So if the evidence was closed out, they would have no survey to present. So if what we're looking at here in accordance with the cases I just handed you are standards that are in effect today, at today's hearing. Mayor Wood was saying, well, we can't bring in any new evidence. We've already passed that gauntlet. They did not appear at our first hearing. There was no evidence to contradict the survey that we provided. There was no evidence in the record at the License Review Board that showed that the distance was anything but the distance that we put forward. So now we're considering new evidence, both their survey and the survey that you've instructed us to put into evidence. So this follows along with Jackson versus 5 Aces. It's the same as Homerville v. Touchton. You're following the law that the state Supreme Court has set in liquor license cases. You're hearing evidence up to the time of the hearing, and this is proper. If Mr. Otta had passed away before today, you wouldn't be hearing this because there would be no applicant, no licensee alive. If his lease had been terminated and he didn't have access to the space, he wouldn't be qualified, and those facts would have changed and we still wouldn't be here today. If his building was destroyed we wouldn't be here today. The facts would have changed. If he, God forbid, had been convicted of a felony in the last week, he'd no longer be qualified and we wouldn't be here. The brick building where the auto store is, if that had been demolished this week, you can be sure that Mr. Griffin would have walked right through that old building and would have held us to walking through that space as opposed to the building that's there now. So we're looking at the facts as they are today at the time of the hearing, and that's the evidence that we've presented for Mr. Barger, that these are the bushes that are there. They create an impediment, but following the case law, you're allowed to consider that. Today is the hearing day. And with those impediments, we meet the 1,500-foot requirement as much as we disagree with the methodology. Let's talk about this reasonable standard. You've seen the videos. I don't know. I don't think that's the route that a reasonable person would take. You saw Mr. Griffin's son jar his elbow into a light pole. You saw him almost fall down a hill of junipers. He risked his life crossing Holcomb Bridge Road. Frankly, it made me uncomfortable watching both parties crossing Holcomb Bridge Road. They're walking down steep grades that were never intended for travel. This isn't a reasonable man. This is a crazy man. We did put the impediments there because we could put the impediments there. Our landlord gave us the right to do so, and we did. And that shows you even more how unreasonable this standard is. It's almost a tit for tat. You figure out, one person figures out one way to go, the next person figures out how to put the impediment there. If the landlord let us, I suppose we could put a maze that filters people in through the front of the building. It's an absurdity. And I realize that what you've done is you've inherited an ordinance that you've selected. You've basically adopted a state regulation that the state changed a few years ago. I question the legality of the states changing that regulation because it's a regulation, not a law that changed. But that's not for you to decide. You've adopted an ordinance that's very specific, so we've got to focus on your ordinance. You can look at things differently than the state. The measurement shouldn't depend on the athletic ability of the person making the measurement. God, if I walk through the junipers, you'd never see me again. It's not that tall. But someone like certainly a taller person can traverse it. You heard Mr. Barger say that he didn't run his wheel on the junipers because it gets stuck. We couldn't really see in the video, but I suspect that the over 1 foot tall junipers jammed up that wheel. And if Mr. Griffin was, well, the video was there for us to see.
Please turn on your microphone. Okay.
I'm suggesting it's on basis of circumstantial
Let's
evidence.
hear the case based upon the evidence, not based upon
I think that
speculation.
evidence is circumstantial. You heard Mr. Barger say why he wouldn't do that, and you saw the video of someone pushing the wheel through the juniper. So I think you can draw the conclusion that potentially that wheel got stuck, that he was pushing it, and it wasn't registering, and it wasn't calculating distance, which is, by the way, according to, you look at Mr. Davidson's letter, and we're trying to avoid things that are more than a foot tall. You heard the evidence; those junipers were more than a foot tall, and that's why we don't go over the junipers, because you can't measure it, and that's why their survey is not in compliance with your instructions, and it's not in compliance with the law. We think that the evidence presented both at our license review board hearing, at our hearing 2 weeks ago with the survey that we put forward, but then again today with the survey that you've asked us to prepare, all comply with your ordinance with the bushes. So thank you. Thanks for your consideration, and really do appreciate your effort with the video and turning over. I know that was very uncomfortable.
And we'll hear from the appellant.
The standard articulated by the city attorney is a definition or interpretation of what an immovable impediment is. You are now asked to decide whether or not the 3 circuits taken by Mr. Barger with respect to the juniper, with respect to the newly planted bushes, around the newly planted bushes and around the juniper bushes and around the island in the parking lot are reasonable under the standard. And that is, now that we know what the interpretation of the statute is, you must decide whether the actions taken by the applicant are reasonable under the immovable impediment rule set down by the interpretation of the immovable impediment rule set down by the city attorney. And I think it may be a difference of 18 feet, but the additional 65 feet was incurred intentionally to create the buffer to get beyond the 500 yards. And I think the question by Councilwoman Diamond points to the effort by the applicant to subvert both the letter and the spirit of the legislation. And we ask you to affirm the appeal. Thank you.
At this time, we'll take it under advisement. We'll have a discussion and closure following the work session. And we'll hope to render a decision after that.
Can we be excused now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. But before we go, let me ask one more time if the council has any questions. Any questions that council may have? Councilmember Price.
Do both parties agree that our definition, as in the letter on page 2, number 2, agree with that definition, or agree that that's a reasonable way for us to be interpreting the law, the ordinance?
We do not. That's an objection that we made.
Just for clarification, what would your what is your interpretation of the way the ordinance should be read?
Well, I think the way Mr. Barger has done his surveys is.
State it for the council. How would it be written?
It would be, frankly, I think the way it should be written would be the way it was written.
And
that was a very clear.
If you'll tell the council in your recollection of how it was written.
It was a pedestrian. It was very clearly said a pedestrian route of travel. I think it said pedestrian route of travel on the ground.
It would be your interpretation, pedestrian route of travel on the ground.
That was a better method. We're not suggesting that we measured it by pedestrian route of travel on the ground today.
I'm asking you, Howard, I know how he traveled it, but as far as a definition of that, what would be a fair definition of how he traveled it?
I think it's the way that
a person would walk it? Reasonable,
either walking or driving, the way that one would travel, the way that a reasonable person would travel.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Appreciate that.
May I respond also?
Yes, sir.
That is specifically, Councilwoman Price, what the legislation changed effective April 1st, 2007. It previously was to follow the walkways, and now is measured in a straight line, unrelated to the walkways and the streets. In other words, as you saw, both surveyors traverse Holcomb Ridge Road at an angle to which of course is illegal, as we know, to jaywalk in the middle of the street. But nonetheless, both surveyors agreed that is the correct interpretation of the statute. And I believe the city attorney's interpretation is consistent with the interpretation of the new law after April 1, 2007 by both the state and adopted by council to how you measured the distance. So I'm agreeing with the measurement. I'm agreeing with the city's interpretation, and I believe the appellee's interpretation is the old rule. So obviously you will have to decide that question, but that's my opinion.
I think what we're saying is it could be pedestrian, it could be vehicular. It's the most direct route of travel on the ground. It's not limited to pedestrian. If you can get in a car or a motorcycle and do it shorter than a pedestrian would, certainly that would be a way to approach it. But we've kind of been left here with a way that's neither pedestrian nor vehicular. It's superhuman.
Okay, one more question.
Yes, one more
Okay, so the appellant agrees that our attorney's interpretation is adequate or correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next question. Is a juniper a bush?
I would have to say the word that I'm accustomed to hearing is juniper bush. So I would have to say, not being an expert in that field, that juniper would be a bush. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wynn.
Yeah, I just want clarification from both Mr. Levinson.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Griffin, your surveyor, he ran it 4 times? That route 4 times?
Griffin, how many times did you run this route back for?
Can I get
That
those
with the
4
wheel?
measures? Yeah, with the wheel? With the wheel.
How many times with the wheel?
4 times with the wheel.
Can I have those measurements, those 4 measurements, please?
Mr. Griffin, the councilwoman would like to know the actual measurements each time.
One of them was 78, we got 82, 1482 twice, 1788 once, 1778 once.
1478.
Hold on, 78, 82.
1478, we got 1 time. 1482, we got 2 times. And I don't know what the other one, well, yes, I do too. One time, we went down the steps over there and got 1428 because we rolled the wheel down the steps. And then I decided that wouldn't be fair going down them steps, and so I disregarded that time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sword, how many times did your surveyor run that?
Twice.
May I have those 2, please?
It was 1565 and 1563.
And did you change your route anyway, as Mr. Griffin said he changed his a little bit on that 1428?
No, both those measurements came from the same route, just one going from one establishment to the other and then coming back.
So you did it you did both ways. What about you, Mr. Griffin? Did you change your...
Yes, we measured it both ways, and we got 78 and 82, 78 over and 82 back. And when he went out and did the videotape, how much was that on the videotape? I think
Well, on the videotape, it was
82.
1478, I think. But so then he actually went up the hill, up the hills then instead of down. So he actually measured going up the hill.
Well,
so he's actually climbed the hills.
How the video was, yeah.
But then he went back and climbed up those hills then, going back. So he used the same route, going south and going north.
Yeah.
In both
He only
directions.
went to video 1 time. You understand? We didn't do the video twice.
No, I'm not talking video. I'm saying the 4 times or the 3 times that you ran it, because we're not going to talk about the stairs. The 3 times that you ran this, you did it both ways, going from Liquor
No, I didn't
Depot
do
to
it both
R&B and from
ways.
R&B to Liquor Depot.
I didn't do it both ways.
You just did it one way.
I just did it one way, and then I tried various ways to see how to get the shortest distance.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you. Are we ready for work session? One more question?
I believe when you hopped over the fence, which normally, or the gate, which normally would be open or could be open, if you had actually gone around the gate, you would have increased the distance.
Yes, ma'am.
So in hopping the fence, was your judgment that it would normally be open and that you were giving your opponent an advantage?
That just represented a straighter line, and I didn't feel like it was an impediment that I couldn't navigate, so I went over the gate.
Okay, but had you gone around the gate, you actually would have increased the distance?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Gentlemen, you may be excused. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Do we have a motion for closure to discuss personnel, real estate, and litigation? Motion by Councilmember Wynn, second by Councilmember Orleans. All in favor, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We have a work session in room 2220 to discuss the Vision goals and objective, preliminary short-term transportation improvements for the Holcomb Bridge Road Corridor Study. So it'll be an interesting work session.